guys, it's Christine here with this week's episode of the Co-Living Code Show. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kindred, which is the software platform for co-living, and excited to bring you this week's episode. We brought on a actual co-liver this time, not an operator, not a real estate developer or investor, but a person who's actually living in co-living. And, I love, Kalen Hayman, he came on the show and he talked about thriving in tribe. And I just love that saying, like, we thrive in tribe, and it's so true. He's over at Hayman Co-Living in Venice Beach. We actually had those founders on a couple weeks ago, if you want to hear that episode. But Kalen came on, he shared his journey. And what's really cool is Kalen is actually a media specialist and videographer, and he helps co-living communities tell their stories. Mainly the actual residents living in the communities. So we've got his link below if you want to check out his incredible video work on some of the people that live in these communities. And so welcome to the show this week, Kalen Hayman. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Co-Living Code Show. I have on Kalen Hayman, and he actually is a co-liver. So I know it's been a while. Usually we have the founders on and we have the investors on and the developers. And it's been a long time since we've had an actual user of co-living come on, talk about why they chose this way of living. Kalen is in Venice Beach, California, and he lives at Hayman over there. And we actually just had the guys on the show recently, the founders. So now it's time to have somebody that actually lives there. And I know he's super passionate about co-living. We're going to go really, really deep into, the loneliness epidemic that's an issue on a global level, mental health, the types of programming they do there at Hayman. So Kalen, thank you so much for coming on this week. So much. We appreciate it. And I know we just met in person in San Diego recently. You got to tour our co-living home in San Diego. So thanks for coming on the show this week.
That was brilliant. I actually found you I went down a rabbit hole, which was essentially your podcast. So finding other founders of the industry and learning so much about the development, how long it had been around. Most people living in community, it's their first time, especially on a younger demographic. It's new. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I ended up buying your book, and thanks for having us down to Kindred Quarters. But yeah, being around communities has changed my life. So I'm excited to be here with you.
Definitely. So let's start there. So I know you've been co-living for 5 months now, and you're in a pod. And this is another concept that when I talk to other people in different parts of the world, they're like, wow, LA is getting a lot of pod living, right? So explain the pod living concept. And, again, you've been there for 5 months and just your experience.
Yeah. So essentially location is huge here. We're in Venice Beach, 7 blocks from the beach. And the amenities and the design and the space of the location and what it had to offer was obviously the initial lure. For $1,000 a month, we're sleeping in a pod, but I like to refer to it as a Japanese style pod. Okay. Sleeping pod, Japanese style sleeping pod is the bougie way to refer to it. Okay. And I think within the first week, I've had some of the best sleeps of my life sleeping in a pod. And having those conversations where we don't need big private spaces to sleep in and hide in and spend all our time in, especially when you live in an outdoor climate that's as beautiful as this location. You're going to be outside. You don't live in community. You don't hide I understand having alone time. We all need to recharge our batteries, but there's something very protective of sleeping in a pod that I don't think anyone knew until they showed up.
I love that. And I know we were trying to get this recording outside originally. It's November 12th. It's super sunny here in California, obviously. So the Wi-Fi wasn't working that great, but it would have been nice to show people like, hey, it's mid-November and it's gorgeous outside, right?
I'm wearing a tank top. I think they get it.
Yeah, me too, right? So people get the weather, right? And yeah, I think some people in the winter might be willing to sleep in a pod just to have better weather. And it's a great location. That's an amazing location where you guys are at. So what drew you to move into that community when they opened?
So I went to school 20 years ago here in Los Angeles and started my career as a photographer. I've been bouncing around Toronto, Vancouver, San Francisco, and I wanted to go back to the location of where I kind of found my passion and started my career. So finding Haven was a great excuse. to get back into the city. And another style of living that I was open to, because I was coming from living downtown, where it's becoming very expensive to live, but community I didn't realize was going to play such a big role in my life. So showing up into a co-living community has had its benefits that I think a lot of people didn't expect. So how was I drawn to it? I mean, I had my personal excuses. I had old friends. I had some passions around my career that I wanted to rediscover. But now I've been here for several months and reaped the benefits of living in community, both personally and professionally. And I think my work has gotten so much better just because I've been happy living here.
And I can vouch for your work. So I forgot to say that Kalen, he emailed me kind of out of the blue, reached out, said he'd been listening to the podcast and read the book, and shared with me some of the videos he had done, which was spotlighting some of the other residents there. And just these incredible stories that just, we'll have a link in the show notes. You guys can check these out on his channel. And these amazing stories of the people that live there. And just, again, they came in, maybe they were battling a little bit of depression. Maybe they were isolated. So maybe share some of those stories that you kind of highlighted those.
Yeah. So even my personal experience has been very relatable for other members in the community. And, day to day outside living in community, you're not going to go around just telling everybody the shit you're going through. Like, no one wants to hear it. It's out of context. But for some reason, living in this kind of space, people are so much more willing to be vulnerable day to day. And so when I started doing some video projects and member profiles, a lot of the personal stories came out. And then I realized how common transformation was living here and living in community. So I've battled with depression for over the past couple of decades. And as soon as I moved into this location, I haven't been depressed for one day. There's been some trials and tribulations around work and relationships, but it's not the same when you're struggling with a mental illness. And it's almost like as soon as you share, it gives someone else permission to be vulnerable and share themselves and their stories. So yeah, anxiety, depression, that's a big one that people speak about. And a lot of breakups and relationships that people are coming out of, because obviously this is like single living. There's no private rooms for couples and stuff like that. So travelers, students, people working. It doesn't feel transient in the space. Like, everyone feels pretty like at home. But yeah, people are going, it's a month-to-month deal here. So, I've been here, this is my 5th month. And I think the longest members have been like 6 or 7 months or something like that. But Hayman just opened in like May or something like that. So it's been short of a year since this community has had its doors open. But yeah, a lot of the stories that have been being shared are some of the most inspiring, for sure.
And I failed to mention, for those watching on the YouTube channel, he's in the co-working space, which is really cool. So we're in an active co-living. I know it took us a few rooms to move around before we hit record, because everybody's very active there, obviously. And so let's talk about, because it's health and wellness. That's the main theme of the concept there that you live at, which is great. And so let's talk about some of the events and programming that you guys have going on there.
So it was interesting because I moved in, so there's 4 properties within this community, shared courtyard that connects all of us. And there was a different community manager when they first opened their doors that helped curate a certain demographic of more mindful, maybe more spiritual people. And they were doing one of the best or longest running classes was a breathwork class. And that was very popular. But when some new management, new community manager came in, started to diversify the community and some of the members that were coming in. So there was a bit of a lull in terms of the programming until a new events director came in. And now more members are hosting, myself included, classes within the community. So to have member-driven programming is really exciting because it actually allows us to flex a muscle. And, I teach a content class around video and photography and helping you tell your story better. There's at least a handful of different yoga instructors, which you would expect in the health and wellness community. What are some of the other ones? Zumba, which is more like music and dance, which is a lot of fun. masterminds, which most communities should have for the entrepreneurial side of things. So yeah, and then any events, definitely, like our events director is vegan, so any pizza parties that are coming in are going to be healthy, with a side of kombucha always.
Yes, typical SoCal, right?
Right.
Avocado toast and on gluten-free bread, of course.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
We have a new account called Hayman Snacks on Instagram. I forget who's curating it, but I was taking photos of all my pancakes, and people love their rice cakes with peanut butter, and yeah. So there's a lot of like co-living bachelor snacks that are going around.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. Everybody knows how healthy the food is in Southern California. I think we're known for that, especially in Venice Beach, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's see. So great. You guys, it's super active. And I mean, don't you feel, and I've told people this, I think not only belonging to a community, but being an active, playing
Member.
active roles, active member, that you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm contributing, I'm making a contribution. And I think that even helps with that human connection, don't you think?
Absolutely. So because I work in content and marketing, this type of stuff, I think it's important to help communicate our intentions right out the gates. They've done a great job at branding the community as soon as they open their door, but to help kind of set that mandate, like everything's new for the first time, like the industry is still new, right? So you can have a mandate, and then what ends up happening is the members take kind of over the culture of the space. And then engagement, just like you said, is actually encouraging members to participate or lead or teach. And sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking when you first move in, a bunch of strangers. You don't really have your bearings, especially if you're not used to teaching before. But I think it's leading by example, right? So just like we're talking about our vulnerabilities and sharing our stories, it's like, if I share mine, it's going to give you more confidence to share yours. The same thing with engagement is, what do you have to teach? What background? There's a lot of interesting stories that people come through here, and there's a lot we can learn from each other. So I think creating that opportunity and a space to communicate, because there's 90 members in this space, and it may take you weeks, if not months, to actually get to know somebody. So I'm trying to find new ways with content and storytelling to be able to connect with people, so we actually know how to relate to each other and actually help each other, personally or professionally.
And so I'm glad, that was my next question to tell people. You guys have 90 residents there. It's 4 separate, row homes, almost like sharing a courtyard. I mean, it's in a pretty, you guys are all in one space. And share the story you were sharing with me a couple of weeks ago about the neighbors. Because again, this is brand new ground up development, but now they put 90 people on this lot of land, which they probably weren't expecting.
It's so quiet. Yeah, quiet hours go on at 10 p.m. We do have a courtyard with a couple like peace pits, I like to call them, little fireplaces outdoors, and the barbecue, of course, and the weather's always nice, so we're trying to be outside as often as possible. But a lot of neighborhoods are undergoing gentrification, and Venice Beach has been undergoing gentrification for years, and we're still in the middle of it. But the previous residents have been here for decades. So nobody, it doesn't matter what new house or new mansion is going to go in next door, they're going to be pissed, okay? It never feels, when we say 90 roommates or housemates, it never looks like that. Like the busiest it gets is like a dozen people in the kitchen at the end of a work day, and, sometimes the music goes on, or the neighbors are going to like knock on the window from outside and tell us, to be quiet. But yeah, there's definitely been some kickback, and I know management has had to deal with that, but it never seems too rowdy. Like, I think the branding of the health and wellness community has actually helped kind of respect the culture and who's brought in. I mean, of course, there's going to be, some problems that come along the way, a little more isolated at times, but I don't think it's going to be the biggest problem. At least that's not how it feels as a member.
Have you guys invited the neighbors in for any event? You're already laughing.
No,
Okay.
it's been suggested. I don't know if they want to come. Different demographics. This is a younger crowd here. I'll admit that. Okay. But it is a good strategy. If you're going to have a party, invite the neighbors. Okay.
Yeah, no, and that's what I just have to, maybe I've said it before once on the show. That is our number one. I mean, I advise everybody to do that. It doesn't matter about your demographic, because same with us, in Mission Hills in San Diego, we were younger, moving into an older neighborhood, I'd say. These are homeowners that have had their homes for 20 years, and, they're expensive homes. And now you've got 6 adults moving into a big house.
Yeah.
And we'd have these wine and cheese events, and I would go around and put flyers and knock on everybody's door. And, every single house I've lived in, we've done this. And honestly, it sets the tone like from the start, like, wow, they opened their home up to us. They explained what they're doing. There were so many questions. Cause again, these adults, these are retired. Some of them are retired and they're just like, what the heck are you guys doing?
Yeah.
So I would say that's a great advice across the board if possible.
I'm gonna bring it up.
Ideally in the very beginning, right? Now it's kind of like,
yeah. It's been 8 months. Yeah. Well, now you invite us to the party. Sure.
Yeah. So again, and then we invite them, to other down the road, but that first wine and cheese is just this opening of like, we're here. This is what we're doing. Right. As you guys see all these cars out front and all these adults living together and just, I don't know. It always set the tone straight from the beginning. It worked really well. And our neighbors were really close with all of them. And there's never been an issue since, luckily. So, yeah, anybody listening. But again, there's not 90 of us either. There's 6 of us. So it's a little bit of an easier sell. So let's, diving back in, I know I shared your story. I know you've, if you want to share a few other stories, especially ones that you've actually taken the time to learn and actually do these video montages of other residents that, maybe moved there, didn't know anybody. Maybe they suffered from depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, what's another story?
So there was DeAndre, who again definitely battled with serious depression, crippling depression, for months. And a lot of these stories are very recent. And when you actually meet some of the new members, you actually have no idea that they're going through such trauma right before they moved in, right? And because it's night and day, as soon as you move in and you're engaged with people, you lighten right up, right? It's actually beautiful. And then Kalen is a body image coach, so she works with people with eating disorders and such. She was still admitted to being nervous about moving in, and then kind of finding her space. And there's different, like we have 4 properties, so each house kind of has its own kind of vibe about it. So it's hard to like reach out to the other your actual neighbors that you live with.
Which the vibe? Sorry to interrupt, but what is the vibe? If you had to put like a vibe on each.
Okay. They're gonna kill me, but okay. And if I was a Harry Potter fan, we had better references of who was Huff and Puff and Dumbledore and all these things, but I don't know the references, so I won't use those.
Okay.
But the house 1 is the busiest because it's the mailing address, and it was the more mindful house of the bunch. So there was definitely a handful more, let's say, spiritual members at the beginning. They have the busiest kitchen, and apparently it's always a mess with all the complaints I heard. But actually, on the flip side, was actually people having a beautiful time because the kitchen and food brings people together and creates community and creates culture. So house 1 has been the first one that was populated. House 2, I can't really speak to because I also don't really hang out with those guys too much. I think to be quite honest, if I had to guess, maybe more of an introverted community of people. And I think management may have played a role in kind of curating that a little bit. House 3 that I live in used to be the rowdy house. Maybe it still is like the loud house. And I think because we have more male members in the front of the house, there's a front and back. And so, yeah, there was like a lot more extroverted for sure in house 3. And then house 4 was like a younger demographic, like definitely a handful more of students. That one's been a little more transient in house 4. A lot of characters. Like I can't say there's like a consistency. A lot of artists, a lot of expressive people looking to find their voice. But yeah, that's the best way I could really define the 4 properties and who lives in them.
And can people, so I'm curious, that's interesting. Can people switch? Have you seen people switch houses?
Yeah, we also have house moms who help, I'll say in the kitchen, because there's dishwashing needs emptying and stuff like that. And, kind of a middle person between them and management. But you can switch, because we had a house mom switch from 1 to 3 because the kitchen was too dirty and she couldn't deal with it anymore. And she's also like a beautiful, like vegan cook. And, so we're happy to have her back in house 3. So you can switch, and sometimes personalities clash. You're not going to be best friends, especially with 90 people. So you have to take that in consideration, that there's character differences. So yeah, management has been great at like supporting shifting between houses.
And you guys have daily cleaning there, right? They come in clean every day?
Daily clean, yeah.
Yeah.
And our members should know, they're not here to clean up after you. They're just here to clean the common spaces, okay?
Okay.
Like, it's a misconception. They're not your personal housekeeping. But
Okay. No, and that's good. And that's dishes in the sink is like the biggest art, like across the board, right? The issue when you have so many people living together is like, just put your own dish away, right?
right,
Like,
every day.
oh, I bet, especially with that many people. So let's see here. What else? So what do you like most about co-living?
Yeah. I think, again, the benefits of, for me personally, the benefits I've taken with my mental health. Okay. So that stems from isolation. I'm self-employed, been working for myself over a decade. So I work from home a lot of the time. I knew it was affecting me, but I didn't know to what extent. I've also worked in co-working spaces, which I've been in some beautiful spaces, but still culture is a really difficult thing to create, especially even in a co-working space, like high turnover rate. Events aren't always taking place in co-working, and a purpose to actually connect people, right? So it's a choice if you want to get to know people and engage in your community, but the more you show up for yourself, the more you're actually showing up for community. So I've learned a lot about the business, and I've learned a lot about personal and professional growth here. And there's a lot of things I didn't anticipate. But now I really want to carve a niche for myself in the industry. And I'm excited to learn a lot about who exists, even through your podcast, and globally in Europe and Asia. Um, Trying to make it to Bali. I'm pitching a lot of co-living in Bali right now. And it's exciting to really kind of look behind the curtain, see what else is going on in the world.
Definitely. And then again, and I love, because again, we have listeners that are investors or that real estate developers, in the banking industry that are really closely looking at co-living, as this new asset class that's coming up globally.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's why this is important, is that I want to show people like, these are the people that co-live, this is,
yeah.
I think some of them have this fixed demographic of like, oh, it's somebody that's right out of college, but that's not necessarily true either. There's a range of ages. So how old are you again?
I'm 38, so I'm
30.
definitely on the older side of this community. Recently, they lowered the age to 18, so there's definitely a lot of students that are coming through, a lot of travelers, some people from out of state coming for work, whatever it might be. So definitely for the next community, I would be looking for people closer to my age, more on the entrepreneurial side of things. But it's good to know. You actually don't know until you live in a space what works for you. But I like the younger demographic, right? There's a lot more optimism. They're just starting their careers. Yeah, they're not as jaded. They may have personal struggles, but a lot of optimism, a lot of energy, right? A lot of more willingness to try new things.
That's awesome. Nope, I agree 110% because I've lived with a lot older and a lot
Yeah,
younger, and I learned just as much from the young ones as I do the older ones.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
so much wisdom to be learned, and especially when you live alongside people. So
yeah.
then, what next question is, what do you like least about co-living right now? You got to pick
The,
something.
well, I'll pick the cleanliness, and more so with my housemates. And the funny thing is, the longer you live in one of these spaces, the more jaded you get because you have to get to know new people, and then all of a sudden, if you're the older member, you're the one having to call out people on their mess or just like keep it quiet or like I don't like to be that person, but sometimes you have to help people be accountable for themselves when you live in community. So that's definitely the biggest struggle of living in a space like this.
And then I'm guessing you're a minimalist, so you don't own a lot of things. So was it easy to move in?
I'm guessing that, well, am I minimalist? I am now. So yeah, I've definitely mobilized my video and photo equipment. There's a little bit of storage space here. That's always a challenge. Um, so yeah, you got to travel light, but and living in a warmer climate helps.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, what did you look at when deciding on a place to stay? There, obviously in Venice, and then if you're going to Bali, like what types of components? I think you said a few of them. So older, obviously closer to your age bracket. What other things do you look for in a co-living place?
Right. Um, I mean, across the board, everyone's talking about high-speed internet and housekeeping and linens. Like it's pretty consistent template. Obviously, these things are kind of sold to you on websites, but you kind of have to do a deeper dive. Like if you're out of state, then you do a virtual tour, which is really nice. But what kind of thing, I think, okay, so here's what you look for. Once you know where you want to live, you get on their Instagram and start creeping the members that live there. Because number one, you want to know who you're living with. That's actually number one, right? I knew there was one guy, Atlas, who's like our events director. I knew I was going to be, friends with this guy right away because I creep him on Instagram. He's posting stories. I want to know what's going on. So I think, and new members come in, they're like, Kalen, I know you're the photographer, right? I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. You were creeping me on the internet. I love that. But so actually who you live with trumps everything, to be quite honest. And you really don't know, but getting a grasp as to like what the culture, what the vibe is. And that's why communication and marketing and content, I think, plays a huge role in setting that. So all these businesses are marketing like their services and their amenities. But I think what matters most is the culture. And because the industry is so new, I think there's still room for that to be evolved. And we're still evolving here in Hayman.
No, and I've said that from stage a few times already. I'm like, listen, everybody, put people on your website interacting. I go to your website and there's only pictures of houses and the bedroom, the gorgeous kitchen, and everything's like so perfect, but there's not a single person on your website interacting. And that's co-living, that's community. I don't see any community. I just see gorgeous pictures of houses and rooms. So I think you nailed it there.
Yeah, I think the collective in UK seems to be doing a pretty good job at that. Like they really push community-driven events and support, and you just see, you see images of people just engaging. Well, that's the other funny thing. There's a lot of businesses using stock photography for like co-living and people drinking coffee together. Like it's
the same photo on multiple concepts. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because it's just, so, I mean, you've been doing a show just almost a couple of years, right? So that's almost as long as the industry, at least this new phase of it and being defined as co-living, which I don't even think is in the Webster's dictionary. Is it?
It's on Wikipedia finally, thanks to my team. It took my team 5 months. It was under co-housing and we took it out of under co-housing because it's co-living is different than co-housing. But it literally took 5 months. I think late last year we started that. I don't know, is in Webster's dictionary? They're not really excited. Maybe we need to work on that next. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. So it's just, I think people do need to understand, let's see pictures of actual residents living in your co-living concept on Instagram. Let's see some fun stories of your events. Let's really, because I think the market is starting to get saturated, in my honest opinion, because I'm so deep in it. I already see it happening. I see that student accommodations are starting to brand over to co-living. Hotels are branding into co-living. I mean, it's going to be a massive, you really need to have a good USP on like what sets our community and our people different. Why would you want to live here? Like anybody can find a roof over their head. And I agree 110%. I say the same. Because I've lived in like normal, regular houses and I've lived in beautiful, incredible houses. And honestly, it was the people. Like I would much rather live with amazing people. That the actual structure doesn't matter as much. So yeah.
I also questioned some people that I was stalking on Instagram. I was like, this guy looks cool. I don't know if I'm gonna be friends with this person, but that's okay.
Yeah, again, you don't have to be friends with every 90, all the 90 people in the community, right? I'm sure you have your core. I'm sure everybody kind of has their micro, groups, right?
It's interesting because you still can witness isolation even within community, right? Because we're all going through something and it's actually tough to open up and share all the things, right? Unless there's a safe space or people willing to actually sit down. And I think that's why in society, people are just keep to themselves because I got enough of my own shit. Why would I want to deal with yours? But actually, the minute you take a moment at the end of the day or whenever it's good for you to have that one-on-one or in a group as well. It's liberating. I feel so much better once we can share.
I love that. And it sounds like that's a good space that you guys provide that space to do that. So my last question that I ask everybody is, Kalen, where do you see co-living in 10 years out?
Yeah. So I think, it's interesting you talk about hotels and student living and really about the design, even the physical design of living. Let's break down the walls. I was sharing some of my friends from back home and, this friend is married with children and she's like, I would love to have co-living for my family. And we talk about, we're tribal creatures, we actually thrive in tribe. right? So it doesn't matter if you're single, whatever the mandate is, design it for communities. And actually, communities should have a purpose to come together and be connected more often. And that's where I'm trying to find my niche, where, you help people earn a better living by living and working in community. So what do you do so well? Do you cook? Um, you do meditations or yoga? It doesn't matter everyone has a skill set. I don't care who it is. Maybe people don't get paid for it professionally. If you live and work in community and you have a reason to engage with your neighbors, life's gonna be so much easier. It's actually gonna be more cost effective. Otherwise, you're going down the street to pay a stranger in a business you have no relation to just because the shop is there. You're gonna pay retail price. Actually, community, you're probably gonna pay half price for some of these services. So I think, I talk about even Facebook. Imagine if Facebook's mandate was to help people earn a better living. I know there's a marketplace you can sell your junk on it, but actually I want to make money with my neighbors because I want to help the people I live with. So much easier. So I think it's going to change culture and community.
Love that. So that is a perfect place to end.
Okay.
So much for coming on the show this week, sharing your journey, sharing your experiences with co-living as a user of the product and somebody that's really going out there and sharing stories of others. And again, we'll have links for your beautiful videos so you can see those stories of the people that are currently co-living.
I'm excited about your app too, because we're still on multiple platforms. I forgot to touch on that, but I'm excited
for
your
technology. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's make things a lot easier. Give more time for building community if we can automate stuff with technology.
Absolutely.
That is what we are working on with Kindred. So
exactly.
Awesome, Kalen. Thanks again.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you want to learn more about co-living, you could check out my book on Amazon, The Co-Living Code. And of course, if you're looking for the perfect software to power your co-living concept, check out kindred.io, KNDRD.io. Thanks. And a quick thank you to SPX Agency for all of the graphics, animation, and design on our YouTube channel.